Down. 15 seconds. We're live. What's going on, everyone? Falcone here, live from Helping Our Music Evolve in East Nashville, Tennessee, and welcome to Falcone Fridays. Hopefully you're seeing the stream proper and everything's working. We worked diligently before trying to get all that set up so we can go live exactly at 1:45, so hopefully we're rocking. Got a little track playing in the background, a little remix I did for this band called Eversole. And I'm going to take you through it and kind of show you some of my techniques. And this is going to be part of an ongoing series that I'm going to do this month, kind of breaking down my production process and how that carries over to the mix process, and kind of just show you my workflow of how I create my songs. So you're checking out the vibe we got here so far. Working good? Cool, we're working. No, this is not wine or cognac. This is coffee in a clear glass. I guess we should mention a little bit, we had some tricky stuff happen to us here down in Nashville, so we hope everyone is recovering and is safe. And, just want to say, with all the craziness that is going on in the world, and in our neighborhoods, and a lot of the fear that's being projected at us left and right on social media, news, or just, socializing with people, you're hearing a lot of people living in fear right now. So I just hope that everyone could kind of stay positive in these times, and not pay thought or put energy towards the fear and negativity, because I truly believe that our thoughts have a lot of power, and if you can focus on the positive things in your life and you can be grateful for the things that you do have, like your health and your home, your children, your family, your loved ones, I think that will continue to manifest in your life. So not to say that you shouldn't be cautious and prepare for things, but just try not to pay so much mind or put so much energy into fear. Just be positive and just be grateful. It's amazing how it works, and it's easier said than done, of course. But it's as simple as sitting down in the morning and writing a few things that you're grateful for, or that you want to happen in your life. So that is my mindfulness speech for today. So with that said, put that energy towards something creative that you've been wanting to do. If your job's closed or your school's closed and you can't do anything, well, it's a perfect opportunity to start something that you always wanted to start. Myself, I'm actually working on a few different projects because I have a little more time on my hands, and I've been getting a lot of fulfillment out of that, and it's great. So I'm turning what seems to be a negative situation into a positive. And hopefully you'll learn a few things today and throughout the next couple weeks that you can help you with your productions, your mixing, or whatever you have going on in your creative world. So are you guys sharing this on any of the groups at all, like on the cell phones? Well, we tried to share. There's a cool feature, if y'all don't know about Facebook, is now you're able to share to groups via mobile. Maybe shoot Logan a text message or something and see if we can get that going, because I think that's a good way to, and if for anybody else that does a podcast or a stream like that, it's a great way to increase viewership and engagement. I remember Logan was just posting on as many groups as he can that he's following, and our views went up from being a few hundred to a few thousand, which was pretty incredible. So yeah, if you like what we're doing, share it in some groups and give us a thumbs up. Make sure you ask us some questions along the way. So here, I'll just kind of dive in and just give you a little overview of what my sessions end up looking like. Um, so this is Ableton, right? So um, when I'm done with the main production, say, part of the session where all the sound design's happening, where all the creative painting's going on. Usually my CPU gets overloaded and it just starts to fart, as they say out there in digital world. And you can't really do anything anymore. So I consolidate everything down into stems, or I just freeze and I print everything. In Ableton, there's a really cool feature I can show you. So if you select all your tracks here, right? For this example, it's just the groups, but then you can go to export audio and video, and at the top here, you'll see it says render track master. But if you said selected tracks only, it will render just the tracks you have selected or all individual tracks, and it'll make new files of all the different elements you have in your session. So that's what I did. I exported it all. And now I created a new session and I imported it into this one. So now I have basically my groups, right? So these are all my drum elements in red here, and some other kind of like effect stuff. I got a little tom bus. So you can see, like, that's just my drums here. I have all the different drum elements. I have a tom group in there for my tom elements and things like that. And then I have a bass. So these are all my bass elements: sub, low bass, bass guitar. I have a guitar element here. So this is a guitar group, so all the different guitars that are throughout the song. I have a vocal group here, which is all the vocals, the little chops, the effects, and things like that. So, and then I have, this is this sound called Airhead, which is one of my kind of staples of Falcone goodness. That's going out another group. Then I have a lead bus, which is all the lead synths. Then I have a synth bus, which is all more the patty kind of stuff, future kind of stuff. Effects, this group 69. Some stuff I added in this session because I wanted different chords and to kind of beef up this hook section, so I added another section here. Those are also going out the same group, but I'll explain that in a second. Effects group, which is because I had effects on the last session, I printed the effects, meaning the reverb, delays, and things that are on the vocals and instruments. Those are in their own group now. Again, these are little effects things that I added in this session, and then I have my prints at the bottom here. And so how I do this is I sum everything through a summing bus. So I have a 16-channel summing bus at home that allows me to get basically 8 stereo groups out of the digital domain. So I have a Pro Tools HD rig. So I have converters. So I have 24 inputs, 48 outputs worth of conversion that I can branch out and do different things in the analog domain. So I send all these groups. So the drums are out 1 and 2, bass 3 and 4, guitars 5 and 6, vocals 7 and 8, Airhead, which is like the dubsteppy stuff, 9 and 10, lead goes out 11 and 12, all the synths go out 13 and 14, and then the vocal effects and stuff go back out the vocal bus as well. So that first hits this mixer right here. This is my LV1 mixer. So this is kind of how I route everything around. So you'll see here, I have, because this is Wave Sound Grid, it's similar to Apollo, but a little more flexible. I'm using the Wave Sound Grid driver that allows me to get 32 channels in and out of any DAW or any computer that's attached to the SoundGrid network. So you can see here, I have in Ableton, I have 1 through 16 and then 31, 32 because I'm only using the first 16 outputs from Ableton to branch out to LV1. And then I also have 31, 32, which is my stereo bus monitor. So when I print back into Ableton, I monitor through 31, 32. So that's why that output's activated. So so basically it goes from Ableton and then it sends it to LV1. So then at the top here, you'll see Falcone's Mac Pro, and you'll get 32 inputs that I can route into LV1. So I'm taking 16 channels out of Ableton into LV1, and then I send them out directly out of the channels. So if I wanted to, right, I could put plugins on the individual channels here in LV1 that are separate from the plugins that I'm using in Ableton. So this becomes like my stem master. This becomes my like mastering rig basically at this point. So how I'm used to mixing, I kind of have different like plugins already on. You can see most of them are deactivated right now because I'm not utilizing them on this in particular session. But I usually have presets that I know that however I set up my gain structure within Ableton, however I'm driving this LV1 here, those plugins are going to help once I get out into the analog domain. So they hit these channels first, then they go out of LV1 here, and I can route them directly out. You see, like I have a DLS at home, right, which is it's basically a server and a box that has DigiLink outputs. So anyone familiar with the old HD hardware, Avid uses DigiLink connectors, and this box allows me to have all my I/O hooked up to it, and with a single Ethernet cable, I can control everything. It's pretty amazing. No longer do you need like a big Mac computer. You literally can have your laptop and an Ethernet connection in a rack full of converters, and you're good. So it's really cool. So that's what the DLS is for me. So you can see there's 32 outputs right now that I can select. But since they're not hooked up right now, they're grayed out, right? But that's how I usually do it. I'll stem one out to 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc., all the way down to 15 and 16. Now we'll go to my summing bus, right, which is just a black box made by Woven Audio. And it's a passive summing bus. You got 16 channels that are hardwired, soldered together with high tolerance resistors, and they get soldered down into 2, and it just comes out into 2 XLR outputs. From there, it gets routed into a mic pre, because when you're using a passive summing bus, you actually lose level because of the resistors. So the levels drop. So you need something to regain that up. So I use a BAE 1073 mic pre to regain the signal. And by doing that, I get to drive the transformers that are within the 1073, adding a lot of color, a lot of body, a lot of harmonics that weren't originally there. And the summing bus is truly amazing because it brings a whole different level of clarity and separation to the song. Like I can have the whole thing dialed in sounding great within Ableton, right? And the minute I just spread it out into these 16 channels through that mic pre, it just comes alive, and it's truly a whole different experience. And we'll do that one day on the stream here. I'll show you. I'll bring in the summing bus, and I'll show you the A/B comparison between the same mix going out the box, just all at Unity, versus it going through the summing bus. I can show you the difference between all the different clocking too. So like if you clock off the interface versus having a master clock that clocks the whole entire system together, you'd be amazed the difference and the depth that you're going to get from that. Another cool thing you can do with this technique is I can print at a higher sample rate going back in. So my multi-tracks here, my sessions are at 48K 32-bit, right? And and Ableton's really cool that way. It can read multiple sample rates within the DAW itself, but can be processing it at a different sample rate. So if my multi-tracks are at 48K and I clock my whole entire rig at 96K, Ableton listens to that, still plays my multi-track back at the same speed and tempo and pitch and everything, because the way it processes. But then I can print that newly created summed 2-track back at 96K. So why do we want to do that? Well, let's think about that. So because I'm now converting it digitally, right, from ones and zeros to analog, I'm creating basically a new file. So because I'm adding that harmonic information and I'm adding gain, I'm driving transformers, I have an opportunity to sample that more accurately, right? So now instead of doing 48,000 samples per second, I can capture that new audio back at 96K, so 96,000 samples, twice as much the resolution as what I'm putting out. So it's really cool to do it that way. And that's what a lot of, big time mixers and engineers do, even if they, because processing power is limited, though it's getting better. They'll have 2 multi-tracks or 2 Pro Tools rigs, right? You'll have one that's doing the multi-tracks and then the other one's printing. So you'll have all the multi-tracks at 48K, 24-bit, 32-bit, whatever, running it through a console, right? And then the output of the console is hooked to another Pro Tools rig that's at 96K, 32-bit, sampling all that back in at a higher sample rate. And there's this, the Grammy Foundation has a standard of which they are a deliverable, so you can look it up. We'll post this too at some point. But the standard deliverable for all record labels is 96K, 32-bit. So that's what they want their masters in. So that's the deliverable when you're at that major label level. So it's a good practice to start thinking about ways that you can archive your own music in 96K, 32-bit for future use, because data is going to get, storage is it's cheap now. It's going to continue to get cheaper, and it's going to be easier for us to record at these higher sample rates, and people are going to do that. Just like 4K video, 8K video. No one can see an 8K, but we fucking recorded it anyway, right? So that's what this same with audio. Side story, funny story. I had a session I needed to pull up from like 2008, and I did it on Windows XP, and it was on a boot camp partition from Snow Leopard, So I was like, man, I needed Guitar Rig 2, right? And Pro Tools always grays out the plugin, and I can't put Guitar Rig 3 or 5 or whatever and get the same presets. It wipes it all out. So, and this was back in when I was just starting out, just graduated college, and I didn't have my workflow, and I didn't, have mentors that taught me how to properly do stuff in my session yet. So I was literally like, I had Reason, and everything was still in MIDI. I had all the guitar amp plugins on there, and I just printed a 2-track. So I had the 2-track, but then when I went to open up the old session to get the individual files, all the data's there, but none of the sounds are there. None of my plugins are there. So I'm like, oh shit, what am I going to do? So I had the actual backup hard drive with the install, with the Mac, with the Windows XP Bootcamp partition on it. So I was like, yeah, I got this. Then I had my old 2008 black MacBook, right? They made it black for a few years. It was 2.4 core duo, 4 gigs of RAM, as much as you could put in it. And I still had that, so I popped the hard drive out, put this old one in, and I got it to boot up, got it to go to Windows XP, and I loaded up Pro Tools, and as soon as I loaded up Pro Tools, the hard drive starts clicking on me. So I did everything I could. I tried to hook it up to a PC, and then I spent all day yesterday doing this, and I couldn't revive that partition. That drive was pretty much dying on me, so I can't. It's unreadable. So I I have all these old DVDs. I burnt all my stuff to dual layer DVDs way back when like it was, $400 to get a 250 gig hard drive, 10, 12 years ago, So I was burning everything on DVD drives. So I go in storage, and lo and behold, I have the Windows XP disk. Let's see if I got I still got the Windows XP install disk, right, with the serial number and everything right there. And I have an old Windows program file plugin install DVD, and I put it up. Like, I don't even have a CD-ROM computer anymore. I have to use an external CD-ROM drive. And sure enough, the plugin that I need is on one of those DVDs. So now I'm going to spend probably the rest of the evening reinstalling Snow Leopard, reinstalling the Boot Camp partition with this Windows XP, so I can install Pro Tools 7 or 8, which I still have the installer and serial number for that too, and load up that session and get my get the files that I need. And it's not like I can't reproduce it, but this is for the Education Connection commercial that I made, which is this like viral sensation. It still blows my mind today that people love this so much. But there was a distinct sound to it. I don't want to like change the guitar riff's like iconic now, so I can't change what that sounds like. So I need the original. So hopefully I'll be able to do that. But that's just to say, like, back up your stuff and start to think about how you're going to archive your music, because you never know what's going to hit. Like, I had no idea that was going to be a sensation, and it was my first professional job as a musician making music out of college. And I was just happy to get the job, and I didn't think of anything of it when I was doing it. But, 12, 13 years later, I'm still making money off of it every month. So, and it's pretty cool. So, back up your shit. All right. So now that I talked all geek, so that's basically what I'm doing here. Just take a step back. I'm explaining, how I end up with a mix. So I get all my stems. I produce everything in another session, get into a stem session, then I start to rebalance, kind of mix things. But 90% of what I do is in the production stage. So if I go through some of these plugins, all my plugin chains on things, you see I don't really have a lot of things going on. Some I do, and I'll explain the different techniques when I get to a stem session on what I do. But it's not like I'm just basically getting everything to talk to one another. I spent the hours in the production session chipping away, carving away, getting everything to fit together in a big picture sense, or like on even a micro level sense of where it's like I'm painting my picture. I know I have the frequency ranges I need to make it sound full and big and large in the speakers. Now it's like, how can I take that an extra step and really start to carve out space dynamically with all the different elements, so that I can really maximize my gain structure and maximize the level that I get out of the speakers. So let's kind of just go through. I'll kind of walk you through my session here, and first I can play it. So I'll play this hook section here. Cool. Let's see if I can play. This is my print. Let's see if I mean, I can hear it immediately. This isn't. It's not loud, but. Okay, this level's not as loud, so if I turn this up a little bit. See what's going on over here. Ah, this is why. I don't know if you can hear the difference, but this is just coming out of Ableton, and then this is my print that I made through my summing bus. Ready? Here we go. All right, back to the 2-track from Ableton. 1, go. The high end just opens up. A little more body comes through. Same multi-track, all at unity, running through the preamp, brings it out. Really cool. So that's where I end up being. So let's go through and kind of show you my drums real quick. Again, this session is not really like my production session, but I can kind of just walk you through. Let's just play solo drums real quick and listen to those. And like, there's cool things I can show you about this. All right, cool. So let's start with the drums. It's like I have a kick drum here. I sequence all my drums on the MPC because it has a feel to it. The way it quantizes things, the way it does velocity is extremely musical. And we've been hearing the MPC since the 80s, all 90s hip hop, Dr. Dre, Jay Dilla, Battle Cat, some of these great DJ Quick, some of these great producers, Timbaland, they all love the MPC, right? Kanye, all these guys use it. Because there's a vibe to it. So I love to sequence in that, but then I stem out from the MPC and I print all my different drums. So that's why I got a kick, a snare, hi-hat. This one was actually kind of chill. I just did, because this is a remix and there was some other information that there's some kind of like program drums that they had already in their songs. I used it along with it, so I was kind of reinforcing what they already did. So I try to create a feeling of movement throughout the song, because I mean, if I can play, this is their joint, right? So.
I am the scattered leaves. I am a steady tree. Unwavering, quietly listening. Yeah. I am the melody, playing the major key.
Right on board. So they had a really there was a little slower. I sped it up to 93 BPM versus 88. Now there's something magical that happens around 93, 94, 97 when using an MPC and you use some swing to it. It creates a really really funky groove and a really kind of chicken head type. So that's why I sped it up a little bit and I changed the kick pattern, to make it ride. Excuse me, Corona. No, we're just playing here. So I try to, and I actually changed the chords. It's something that I love to do. Like, so this is the way, which is great for like a car commercial or something, or like a bank. Sounds great.
Lay me down, lay me
So I chose to switch up those chords. So we're in A minor. My homie Chase would know this a lot better than I do as far as chords go. But I use different chords in A minors and different inversions of the A minor scale to make it sound happier and brighter and not so dark, I guess. So and I love to do that. I like to take an acapella or a song that's in a key. I might switch the key or I might use the relative minor or major of the key to just make it feel completely different than the original did. So these are the chords that I chose. Which are completely different, but if I play that with the vocal here.
lay me so far down. I gotta find a way to get up now. Wear me out, wear me down and out. I gotta fight to feel them enough, and I've been searching.
So it still works. Completely different chords, and changes the vibe to, from.
Lay me down, lay me so far down. I gotta find a way to get up now. Wear me out, wear me down and out.
So that's kind of my approach, is how can I make it sound cool and different but still work with the key. So going back to my drums here.
I am the scattered leaves. I am.
So let's look at the kick drum here. Drum bus just slamming right now. Come on. All right, so let's show you what's going on. We'll get into the nitty gritty in a second, but so this was the original stems drums that they gave me. I have a little EQ rolling off the low. All right. So that was the original. They also have a live drum set in here, which I don't think they may have played at this part. I kind of chopped it up and made it do what I wanted it to do. So this was with the. So I definitely did that. I just found a snare drum that I liked and I duplicated it. I think I might have used two. I actually did use two. You can hear how they're slightly different to kind of create that feel of a real player, which it is, but cool thing I did here was I took this hit, I reversed the snare hit, so and to kind of give it that anticipation. So again, I'm just rolling off from 100 hertz down on the real drums. Kind of getting that lower octave out of there. So that was the original files, and then I went ahead and layered, some program drums of my own over top. So here's the kick. Without the kick. I mean, and even like with the kick that was there, listen to the beef, That's not rolled off, There's a little body of beef down there, but not much compared to, when you add this kick in there. The solid, And you could see that MPC really works well because I was able to dial in the swing and the shuffle to actually feel just like the drummer, You can't tell the difference. But then you also got those cool ghost notes that the original drummer is playing, which is, you can do it with a drum machine, but there's nothing like having a real drummer on there. And a lot of times I like to do that. I'll have someone play real drums over it, maybe just use the overheads, But you can hear like the kick pattern in the original drums. There's like, it's a different syncopation than just the 4 on the floor kick that I added, right? Boom, 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 right? But and you can hear how that plays rhythmically in when I add mine in there. It becomes a different element. It's more of a percussive element versus actually a kick drum. Another cool thing I like to do is I like to reverse kick drums to add anticipation and add transition from section to section. So listen how you can see here, this is a kick drum that's reversed, and listen what it does. Play it again. And then I'll take it out. And I'll play it with just the overheads and that reverse kick. See, it's just ever so slightly, this little kick. Reversed, played with the kick drum here. It adds a little feeling, a really cool vibe to it. And this is kind of how I like to do it. Like, I put a fade on it because if you put the click with it, sometimes you get like a flam that happens. So I try to line it up to where it's kind of in phase with one another. You can see how these troughs line up with each other here. Overlaps just a little bit. So we kind of go, anticipates it going in there. Those are little tricks to add to spice up production and add feel and groove. Here's the other drums, program drums, right? Add in the real drums. Oh, and don't ever underestimate the power of a good ride cymbal. So. Take away the live drums. And listen to the hi-hat or the ride cymbal. It's in pitch. It's in the key of the song. I always tune my drums to be in the key or in a note of the key because sometimes it's cool to go up a third or a fifth and kind of use the timbre of the sound to match another timbre in the song, so that it can fill in a space that needs to be, um, frequency wise. So so if I told the you can you can hear how one's pitched up a semitone and one's pitched down a semitone, and it's panning left and right. Really cool to do with like even open hi hats and stuff like that. Uh, just to add that extra little excuse me, on top of the track there. And also, let's look at these toms here. So I have these toms that I added. A lot beefier. So this is without the toms. And then these are with my toms. Adds that lower octave in there. I got a nice main, kind of big stomping. Got one of those. These are the see, like, no mid range, all just like body and low end. What I like in toms. All right, on the full drum bus here, I have this glue compressor, and this is all with gain staging, because I want to be able to control these drums before they hit my master bus limiter or the multi-band that I usually have on. You see here, I have this multi-band here, or I use, the tape emulator on my master once I print it back from the preamp. I usually put some plugins on before I actually print it back into Ableton as just like this standard go-to part of my sound. The way I set it, it's like I know when I drive gain into it a certain way, it's going to react a certain way. It's going to allow me to maximize my level a certain way. But I like to control individual groups with their own levels of compression and limiting, so that those later down in the chain don't have to work as hard, and you can really maximize your sound. So things I've been doing lately is using this sidechain feature on compressors a lot more. And this is on the bus. So what is this doing here? Okay, I'm activating the EQ part of the sidechain, which is saying, okay, what frequencies do you want this compressor to react to? So I'm choosing to have a high pass filter at 160, meaning anything 160 and below is not going to get compressed. It's going to be filtered out. And then everything above that will get compressed. So what does that achieve here? Well, I worked really hard in the other parts of this mix to get the punch. To get the low and right, because I work so hard to build the cake from the bottom up. I set my foundation. I use 90% of my headroom on my low end, so I can consistently have that punch. So I don't want to kill that on the mastering or all these buses or anything like that. I want that to be the loudest thing always. So by doing this, I'm eliminating that extra level of compression on the low end of the kick drum or all the low end elements, but allows me to aggressively, air quotes, compress anything above that, right? So the top of the snare hits, the really quick transients, right? So, for example, I'm right here. I have it set with a 10 millisecond attack time, so I'm gonna get a little slap depending on my gain structure, right? I have it set to a ratio of 10, so it's more acting as a limiter, and I have an auto makeup or an auto release basically, which is saying it's floating. It's just floating on top a little bit. It's not creating that much change dynamic. It's just riding on top and letting it float on dynamically. Um, so let's hear what that sounds like without it. Activating it, ready? Well, watch if I drop this down. See, it's kind of just holding on to it there. I also have this soft clipped on there, which acts as basically a limiter. Brings out a little more punch in the kick drum. But it doesn't affect my low end. It doesn't squash the sub, harmonic information. It lets that pass through, but it grabs anything above 160, where anywhere between 600, 800, 1.2K in the kick drum and the snares and everything. It's biting that. It's at a 10 millisecond attack time, so I'm hitting that harder, compressing it just a little bit, making the gain back up. Now it sounds a little more punchier, a little more in your face. And it does something to the high end of the low end, and in my stomach area. It kind of puts a little more punch to that. So I try to get my gain structure right, because I just want my drums to be cracking, and I don't want any of my master bus stuff to take that away. So that's kind of a technique I like to use. So let's go to the kick drum itself here. And then, okay, so before I do that, let's touch on gain structure just real quick. I can go a whole week just talking about gain structure, but because it's so powerful once you understand how to do it. So like you could see my level on my kick drum is negative 6.2, right? So there's something that happens, like when I have 6 dB a headroom, 7 dB a headroom, something, it's the clarity that happens, right? And it allows me to set my gain structure up a certain way. If I anchor my kick, I'm sure people have heard about this, anchoring your kick at like negative 6 dB, negative 7 dB, or whatever, to allow your gain structure, if that's the loudest thing in your mix is your kick drum, and that's sitting around negative 6, negative 7, it's going to give you enough headroom later down the line to then turn everything up to get your levels, hot as you want it to be. But, like if I turn this up to 0, you can see my levels like already at 0. I'm pegging this compressor, and it becomes too much. So I want to lower it down a little bit to allow me that headroom later down the line. And here's some EQing and kind of dynamic processing I'm trying to show you. So when I get to this stage, it's like, how can I get everything to fit in to one another? In my previous sessions, which I'll go more into depth on those too. We'll open those next time, and I'll show you how I do the MPC stuff and how I combine multiple samples together to kind of get to this kick drum right here. So what I'm doing here, a few things to recognize is kind of the frequencies that I'm choosing here, right? Um, and I'm doing this by ear, but it's funny how they kind of all always end up to be somewhere near the key of the song. So, like for example, this big cut is at G sharp, and we're in A minor. So I'm eliminating, and it looks like a big cut, but really it's only 2 dB, um, depending on what our scale of our window here is. So it's 2.5 dB at 51. I'm rolling off a little bit, around 36, dipping a little bit around 80 or 90 to 100, because that's where stuff builds up a lot. Kind of gets boomy in that area, not so clean. And then I'm eliminating a little bit the 1.5, 1.6 area, which is around G, and then boosting a little bit to get it more of that snap on that kick. So I'm going to deactivate these plugins real quick. So the kick. And then I'll put on this EQ. Everyone's like, what? I didn't hear a difference. But I sure can. And you can kind of see if I do, let's see if I can get it to do it. If I freeze this, I think when it happens. Okay, so when I freeze this, you can see the before and after the, what I believe is this purple one's the after, or the not the less darker one is the after, the darker one is the before, and you can kind of see the difference I'm doing in the EQ there. But again, these are subtle changes. Why? Because at this point, when your gain structure is maximized so much, this shit matters. 0.2 dB here, 0.5 dB here. The better your speakers are, the more clearly these little changes become, and the more impact you can have. So when I'm doing all these moves, like I'm literally sweeping and trying to find, I'm trying to get it to feel a certain way on my body. So for whatever reason, in my studio, listening to this, when I'm deep inside, it's like this changed something for me. So it's not that drastic or dramatic of a change, but listen to the high end, listen to it. It just all clears it all up. Without it, sounds like there's a blanket over it. And then just the right amount of boom in the bottom, punchy, little dull, little brighter. And then I also have this in linear phase mode, which doesn't change the phase relationship between frequencies. Now you get a little pre-ringing down here, which is really not that big of a deal on this kick drum because I don't have a long decay. It's really tight and punchy, so that doesn't necessarily come into play. But again, you're going to have ridiculously good speakers to even hear the difference between this. But if your plugins have linear phase mode and you're adjusting high end, works a lot better in high end. Natural phase mode is a combination between both. Zero latency is just it's for us plugin or us laptop guys who need to not have a lot of processing power, or need more processing power, because linear phase and natural phase use more. But after that, I have a dynamic EQ. See what it's got going on here. Just tickling it a little bit. right? If I soloed that, hear the punch. Literally, can hear the punch happening. Right, a little softer, more up in your chest. So I'm just kissing that, and that's why a lot of time I'll monitor just through my subwoofer, right? So I can hear what 80 and below is doing, because there's so much more information above that. Your ear is more sensitive in 1K to 3K or whatever. So it's like your ear's going to automatically go into that and it's going to mask what low end sounds like. How can I know what the low end's really doing? So if you solo isolate a frequency or you just play things through your subwoofer, I could tell like when I solo that and then I listen out, I'm training my ear to hear what 60 hertz sounds like with everything else in the mix. And I just needed that to a little bit. So what am I doing? It's like not even 3 dB. But how I set my attack and release times is based on my this chart I made for myself, the Falcone secret sauce. Allows me to know that because I'm in my tempo is 93, that attack time of around 13.4 milliseconds with a release time of 146 is mathematically in sequence with that tempo, so I know I can get it to ride a certain way. And the better your speakers are, the more time you invest on, training your ears, you're going to hear what happens at certain frequent or at certain attack times and release times. You'll start to feel the punch. You can get it to musically ride and like hit together. There's like the goal is you want all your compressors and everything to hit around the same time musically, so you can kind of create a punch overall as well as the individual elements in the mix. So the more you practice these techniques and the more you train your ear to hear the difference between what a 13 millisecond attack time sounds like versus a 23 millisecond attack time versus a 3 millisecond attack time, all of these things are useful in a mix, but it's what you're trying to do to achieve that, and then training your ear to know that's what you want when you hear it and feel it. 3 minutes to go. All right, so that's kind of a brief overview of a session, and I'm kind of now just going through the drums a little bit, in describing my technique of how I'm trying to combine things together. But for next week, and I'm also going to be doing a seminar here at home on March 24th. It's like the science behind mixing, basically, and I'm going to break my techniques of how I use math and physics to tune a song and produce sounds and sound design and really get a mix to speak harmonically within the tempo and the key of the song. So I'll touch on this next time, but just a little preview of that because we got a few minutes here. Just interesting ways that I use side chaining. Okay. I like to side chain different things to one another. So let's see if I can get an example. Good chord. I mean, look at this crazy EQ right here, man. Look at this thing. That's just like shape and tone. So like I'll take this is coming low ARP, okay? So I'll take this is a preview, so we'll go do this next time. But stand by. Always got to part two. All right. So
I live inside. I'll change your mind.
So we'll just touch on this briefly because we don't have enough time and my time's over anyway. But I'm going to show you how I sidechain things to one another. For example, just for a quick example, I'm using a dynamic EQ with this sidechained from this electric guitar only on the stereo information because I got my guitars panned hard left and hard right, and there's a lot of information in that guitar around 901K guitars, right? So what I'm choosing to do is on this synthesizer that's sharing that same frequency range, whenever that guitar is chugging away, it's going to turn down on the sides in the stereo field. It's going to compress around 1K only when the guitars are present. So dynamically, if there's dynamic in the guitars, that compression is going to happen dynamically, allowing those two sounds to share the same frequency range at the same time dynamically. So usually you would do it with an EQ. It's like, oh, there's a guitar and a synthesizer sharing the same frequency range. Well, let's cut a little bit out of the guitar in that frequency range, or the synth in that frequency range, so the guitars can cut through. But what if we want that EQ? What if that guitar is not playing at a certain point and that synth is playing? Now we want that frequency range back. Well, this is the way to do that. So when they're playing together, they'll talk to one another and they'll compress certain frequency ranges. And on the guitar, I have the guitar sidechained to that synthesizer as well. Like you'll see here, I have around 245 hertz in the mono section of the guitars. That's going to be compressed, and that's being sidechained from the synth. So on the sides, on the synth bus, the guitars are triggering around 1K to be attenuated anytime it's being played. And then on the guitar bus, the synthesizer is compressing only in the middle around 250, so I can get the body from the synthesizer that's in the mono information to cut through more, because I don't want the guitar to muddy up the center. I want the guitars to be on the sides. I hope that all made sense. Okay, so that's kind of the approach. That's what I'm going to be teaching in my seminar, and over the next few weeks, I'll show you guys those techniques and how to hear those things and how to start experimenting with these things, because we have the tools at our disposal to do things like we never could do them before. So I like to push the boundaries of what music sounds like now and what it's going to sound like in the future. I guarantee you, if Pink Floyd had a stereo imaging program where they can separate and spread out different frequencies, they would have used it beyond belief and made stuff sound ridiculously crazy. You know, they still did it, and they still made it sound ridiculously awesome. So we can utilize those techniques that are tried and true for the past 40, 50 years. But my goal as an engineer is, how can I push the boundaries with the tools that we have at our disposal to change the sound and add to the sound and make it different than what we've heard for the last 40, 50 years. So anyway, been awesome talking to you guys, Geek, today. Thank you so much for checking in. Tune in next week. We'll have some more information. I'll dive in more on this session. And if you're watching this on a replay, leave some comments. Let me know what you guys want to learn about, and I'll try to touch on that stuff. But this is going to be an ongoing series where it's just going to be me kind of talking to you like this, showing you these little techniques. And if you're going to be in town on March 24th and you're interested and getting a more hands-on approach to how I'm going to be how I do this. I'm going to bust out the whiteboard, and I'm going to really go in depth on the theoretical part of how to really think about this before you even touch anything inside your computer. So um, hope you guys have a wonderful, safe weekend. Remember, stay positive, be grateful for everything in your life, and always have positive thoughts and send out prayers for everyone um, here in Tennessee and around the world. So, uh, love you guys and take care. And if you guys love to, like cryptocurrency, it's going wild, man. You get like 10, 20, 30% swings up and down. I got my Coinbase app on my phone is just like sending me notifications. So good opportunity when there's volatility in the market. There's opportunity to make some money. So have fun out there. If you got an extra $100 or two, watch it and see if you can get it to drop and see if you can make a quick, 100% on your money in a few hours. So, all right, guys, take care. Falcone live from Helping Our Music Evolve in East Nashville, Tennessee. Have a wonderful weekend.
I am a steady tree, unfazed, unwavering.